JB here, JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. Tuesday, August 19th, 9:09 a.m. on this fine morning. Talk really quick about the market. Some names I'm looking at go from there. S&P futures slightly in the red here this morning after yesterday's flat session. A 0.27% trading range yesterday, one of the tightest ranges of the entire year. I have to go and look at the data. I've seen 3.31% back in January. There were a couple back in January and February. Outside of that, I mean, it has to be one of the tightest ranges, and particularly telling, or I I wouldn't say, just what's impressive is that we're right at stone throws away from all-time highs, right, a fraction away. So to see a trading range like that is just impressive. Um, so yeah, the S&P slightly in the red here yesterday, very tight trading range. S&P closed down a hundredth of a percent, so nothing there. And now we head into potential catalysts. There's not much in the way of catalysts again this week. We do have earnings this morning. You had Home Depot miss estimates, but they were pretty positive on their outlook, right? Said there's trends are accelerating, so good stuff there. So at first you saw the reaction, knee jerk, stock trades off right after the report, and now it's bounced back solidly in the green. So maybe that's a sign here this week that the retailer earnings might be better than expected. Target tomorrow morning, we get Walmart Thursday morning. So Target's been pretty much a basket of disappointment over the last couple of years. So maybe there's a turn of a changing tide here for Target. So that'll be interesting tomorrow morning. And then Walmart, which Walmart was the first retailer to kind of like say, okay, tariffs aren't going to have that big an impact, or at least short term. And they were kind of like the first one to say that. And they had their investor day a couple, 5 months ago. That was kind of like the start of, okay, maybe things might not be worst case scenario, get the bomb shelter, dig the bomb shelter, and get ready for financial Armageddon, right? And that hasn't happened. So at least not yet. So that's kind of callous. Then, of course, the Fed minutes tomorrow, 2 o'clock. You have two dissenters, so maybe there's something to read through there. Maybe dovish spin. Okay, we'll see that. And then Friday is Fed Chair Powell. So 10 o'clock. I mean, it's headlines now this week. It's like, oh, the market's a little jittery ahead of Fed Chair Powell as the market ratchets back expectations for a rate cut in September. I would think it's pretty much 100% probability. I think anything outside of that would probably markets would get very choppy. So hopefully he can kind of paint that picture that gives that outcome coming in September. Markets kind of go there, stay the course, and then maybe we get to back over all-time highs into the weekend. If not, I put it on the watch list this morning and yesterday. I think there's at least possible, maybe some caution heading into Wednesday and Thursday. So maybe there's going to be a little weakness. I don't know. Yields continue to tick up. We'll have to see. Outside of any kind of catalyst, like what other push can the markets? What other catalysts can come out? And maybe it's the earnings tomorrow with Target or the Fed minutes. All right, so that's kind of overall market. And again, I always take this with I don't have my bear suit on, right? This is just I'm just open to the possibility that there could be some kind of pull. 636 is kind of that spot I'll be watching on the SPY. I mean, that's a big move here. We're at 642 and change here. But if we get there and break, then I'll look for a possible put hedge or two, and not for a pull all the way down to 620, 621, right? Just maybe a little more weakness down into the 632 range. And always try and keep things in perspective and context. It's like that's levels not seen since a week and a half ago, right? So it's not like, oh my gosh, we're breaking areas we haven't seen in a couple of years. So all right, so that's kind of overall markets. Now just individual names. Of course, VKTX is the first thing I'll talk about. Disappointing, right? It's a name I used to trade that back in the day. I don't know if it was like 3, 4, 5 years ago as a Nash play, right? And back in the day, I used to be very big on Intercept Pharmaceuticals, which got acquired, Madrigal, MDGL, and VKTX, because this is before like GLP-1 became mainstream and like, oh my gosh, the LLY and the MVOs of the world weren't what they are right now. And so VKTX was a name I stumbled more on the Nash side, but then it became the GLP-1 play. And then I traded it on and off, and it always had a high short interest. So because of that, when it moves, it tends to have outsides moved. And when you're in inexpensive calls and it has an outside move to the upside, those turn into big gains. So I've traded off and on, and then I had earnings the week of the data, right? And it ran from like $12 all the way up to like 30, and my calls were up a couple $1,000%. So I'm like, let me lock them in. And then sure enough, it goes from $35 all the way up to $100 a couple days later. But then it just seems like the bears, they kept their short interest, and the short interest was high in the 90s and then in the 80s. And it's like, maybe this, they know better, right? I don't know. And so, I've been waiting on this oral GLP-1 data. If you heard my rant on Friday and Monday, because the last of my August strikes were expiring, I still want to have a piece into the data, but it's like, I had in the back of my head, and you can hear it on the rant yesterday. I'm like, it's just my concern that something like this would happen. So they had great data, right? 12.2% was the highest weight loss of 13-week time frame of the highest dosage cohort, right? So I think it was 120 milligram. The main dosage cohort, which between like 30 and 90 milligrams, they average it's like 7%, 8%, and like 11%. So you take that data together and then look at LLYs, which their study was like 72 weeks, and they averaged a 12.4% at their highest cohort or whatever dosage cohort. But you start comparing the numbers and the adverse effects, and it's like, I guess people are looking at the data for VKTX and say, well, it's not really completely best in class, right? It's like apples to apples. I don't know if that's what they're looking at. It's just disappointing, frustrating. I put this when I was doing the watch list for the last couple of weeks. It's like, this is kind of like the nail in the coffin for me in regards to trying to trade VKTX for upside. Maybe it becomes an M&A play. I didn't hear the conference call, so maybe I'll try and listen to the conference call or get the transcript and read it and see if there's anything that changed my mind. But gosh, just so disappointing. You have to think there's some value here, especially their cash position. And some of these biotechs, I mean, they trade less than cash, what have you. But the thing is with VKTX, just to roll out oral GLP-1, it's going to be billions of dollars. So who knows what that looks like. There we have a partnership, so that kind of takes some of the cost out of it. Rants for other days. It's frustrating because I know there's a lot of folks in it too. So I wanted to see it go to the moon, $100. And not only that, sometimes it's nice to see some of these shorters who, sometimes manipulate stocks just to their benefit. And, some of the reason VKTX has high implied volatility. So as shorters, they can hold the short, sell premium to offset the losses. Anyway, rants for other days. We'll see how it trades here. It's at $26, and of course, first reaction is like, well, it's closed at 42. Great data. You have to think it's an opportunity here. Maybe it's not, right? I'm not saying it goes lower. I'm just gonna probably not waste any mental energy. You have finite time in this universe to do things, right? I have finite time to do research, look at charts, technicals, news, all that stuff. And VKTX is taking some of that finite time, and I'm gonna stop wasting time on that, right? Not because I don't. At some point, maybe it is $100 stock and then some. For now, it's gonna be on the kind of take off the watch. All right, so that's that. MDB, great day yesterday. Some continuation, like the A team. I love it when a plan comes together. I had those calls on Friday. Let break over that lower trend line, all the way up to the 200-day moving average, 231 and change. It came up to 231.55. Locked some of my calls out for over 100%, 200%. Held the rest, and then I took some of those profits and rolled them into some higher strikes, just because MDB is volatile, right? So it could be up another 7% today. No news or catalyst. There was a nice City catalyst watch note yesterday. They raised the price target 405 395. Big spot here today. I mean, it tends to be volatile. So if it gets down to 225, depending on what my 230s look like, I'll close the rest out and revisit, and then just hold the higher strikes. But like this setup, they have earnings next week, so this could be one of those moves where it's like the market's going to run it up into earnings. I think the earnings are next Tuesday. So that's MDB. Lulu, solid day yesterday, finally back over that 205 handle that it hit last Wednesday. Locked some more of my 215s in for over 200%. Locked some of those 230s I added on Friday for 50%, just to start covering a little bit of cost. Again, similar to MDB, you just don't know. Lulu could be down under $200 today. I don't think that's going to be the case. Wells Fargo did update their price target. They have an equal weight rating, but they lowered their price target today. But a lot of that's a function of where the stock price has been, right? I mean, stock was $420. So these analysts, they're keeping their ratings. They're just adjusting their price targets because of where the stock price has gone, right? So I'll just continue to hold those strikes. I'm not going to add anything here. And I'll probably, even if there's weakness today, I'll continue to hold those because Lulu's kind of been, it's been volatile. And I think, I think at some point it becomes one of those FOMO plays where people start looking at, the United Healthcare move and so on and so forth. So that's UNH. I mean, that's Lulu. Onto Align, right? So finally got some more strikes in Align. I shouldn't say finally. I had them like a week and a half ago. I think I keep saying it's going to bounce at some point, whether it's the autopilot from their stock buyback, whether it's just a bounce from oversold conditions. You look at the chart, somewhat pinching. You also had, after the close yesterday, they announced a patent litigation against some company who does aligners in Asia. I don't know what impact that has. Hopefully, if anything, it just puts a positive spin on where a line is, and maybe puts a little spark in the shares. I don't think it really needs it anyway. Big spots, 146.80 was the last week's high, so if we can break through that, I think that's a good sign. And then it's 149 and change was its earnings high, post earnings high. So if it gets through that, I might look for some more strikes. Call me crazy. So that's a line. Then just some other names. Service starting to go here. Nice news yesterday, acquiring in a robotic AI name for, it looks like, good terms too. And then part of the deal allowed them to buy shares at like 1043. So to me, that kind of like puts the floor in for the stock short term. Another name that has high short interest. It played it nicely in July when it had a nice spike up into the 13s, and then it's been kind of like sitting around doing nothing. So at some point I think it starts to break out again. I'm not sure if I'm going to add some more strikes. Still have the September strikes that are underwater. I'll just continue to hold those. Then two other names, I rant yesterday afternoon. I was talking about Lemonade. I mean, I've been talking about it for quite some time, but the 65s look interesting on a risk reward basis, just in regards to a possible next leg to the squeeze. Some consolidation up here at $60. Great sign yesterday. You have BMO Capital reiterating their underperform rating or maintaining it and raising their price target from 19 to $42 or 23 to $42. So I think it was $23.42. It's like these folks. And I remember it was like Citigroup and Morgan Stanley used to have this back and forth on Carvana back in the day, and Carvana would be $100, and I think Citi was the one who was short. They would reiterate their underperform rating and just raise the price target, and then Morgan Stanley would do the same. And then Carvana sold off, and they be back and forth. It's just comical. It's like, when does BMO Capital throw in the towel? Is if Lemonade goes to $100, do they maintain underperform and raise the price target? I mean, like, you just kept your underperform rating and raise your price target 100%. It's crazy. So comical is more like it. So a good sign to shook it off. We'll see if it has continuation, breaks over 60 and holds that in the morning hours. I might look for some lotto calls for a potential squeeze 2.0. And then last but not least here is Reddit. So disappointing yesterday. I wouldn't say disappointing. I almost pulled the trigger. I'm getting some like 270 strikes. It hits highs right in the morning and then just melted for the rest of the day. Here it is at 237 here this morning. So yeah, maybe I'll just wait and see here. But if it gets down to like 230, I don't know if it's going to pull there. I might look for some spec lottos. And then on the flip side here, I put it on the watch list. If the SPY 636, we get shenanigans, I'll look at the same usual suspects for potential put hedges, the Broadcoms, the AMDs, ServiceNow, and or possibly just SQQQ calls, because those are inexpensive. Do I think there's a probability we get under 636 on a SPY? Probably not, but 25% probability if I had to put a number out there. But I think it's, especially with the market at highs and yesterday's action, you have to think at some point, you just got to be open to both sides, right? I mean, we can be over 650 by the end of the week. I think that would probably have a higher probability, but at the same token, it's good not to get caught with your pants on. All right, let's have a great day. I'll be back on audio later. Rock and roll.